Hello students, my name is Moon and this is Medical Emergencies for the Bystander. This is part of the Frank Egan Memorial Lecture Series. I am a doctor, but I don't practice medicine, I only teach. I am a current New York State paramedic and I was on the ambulance here in New York City for over 10 years until I finally left it to teach full-time only. But I still teach the EMT program here at Queensborough Community College, and I also help out at the LaGuardia Community College paramedic program and their EMT program too. So anyway, the purpose of this lecture, this presentation, is for those who call 911 but they don't have any medical background or training themselves. So I'm not going to talk about specific medical treatments for specific medical conditions. That is way above the needs of this presentation. Instead, it's all about people who don't have any knowledge about healthcare or even biology, but suddenly they have a medical emergency. What can they do? Well, when you have a medical emergency, it's a little late to be listening to this lecture, but hopefully by watching this lecture, you'll be a little better prepared for if you ever do. First things first, in any medical emergency, the most important person there to you is you, not your loved one, not your friend or family member who's actually having the medical emergency. It's you. It's simply because if you get hurt, then you're not going to be able to help this other person. And not only that, but you just call 911, an ambulance is coming to help the person you called for, and then if you get hurt, now they need to take care of you too. So they have to split their attention and desperately call for a second ambulance to help you. You're not helping. You run into a burning building, you get attacked by an angry mob, you get bitten by the same dog, you inhale the toxic gas coming out from behind the warehouse. You just became a second victim when you were trying to help the first one. Remember when you are on an airplane and you hear the safety briefing before flight, what does the airline steward say? If the oxygen mask drops from the ceiling, you put it on yourself first before you help another person. Because if explosive decompression happens at 30,000 feet, you will lose consciousness within seconds and you cannot help this other person. So make sure you stay conscious and well, and then you can help other people. So it's all about safety. And so if you see anything going wrong, you have to get safe first. If it's angry mobs, angry dogs, toxic gas, you need to get to a safe place first. Once you are safe, then you can call 911, and that is really the best thing you can do for this person. If it's for your loved one, of course, that's what you're going to do at the minimum. If it's for an acquaintance or just a stranger you want to help, hey, you just calling 911 is already above and beyond the call of duty. Pat yourself on the back. All calories for the rest of the day do not count. If you can, call 911 to help a stranger. If you really want to go above and beyond, like this is a loved one and you really want to do everything you can to help them, the next thing you can do is, while you are still safe, stay available to direct first responder vehicles. Because there have been many times where I arrive at the designated address and I can't find the patient. So by having somebody there waving energetically at us, my partner and I can look at each other and say, I guess that's the guy, and we go there and get the information, and our approach is accelerated to the patient. Another great way you can help is if you have a second person available. The first person should stay as close to the victim as they can, as long as they stay safe. But then you would need a second person to help EMS get to you. So let's say you're in an apartment in New York City, and typically apartments around here, they have a ground floor, a main floor that has a locked main door, and they have to be buzzed in, right? We have lost so many minutes standing at the buzzer panel waiting to be buzzed in. Instead, if on arrival there's somebody standing at curbside waving at us, so we immediately park right there, we get our equipment and follow that person in, and they have the door key and they can immediately let us through the main gate. Oh, that saves so much time. So, but only do that if you have another person available. Don't ever leave the person who's the victim. As you want to stay as close to them as you can while you stay safe. The next thing to consider is the PPE, or personal protective equipment. Before, the previous slide was all about dangers to you from outside the patient. This one is about dangers to you from inside the patient. Do they have an infectious disease that you don't want to get on yourself? And so I'm talking about masks and gloves. Thanks to the pandemic, the lockdown from a few years ago, now gloves are available, easily available at any supermarket, $10 for a box. You know what? Buy a few. Keep $1 in the kitchen, keep $1 in the bathroom, keep $1 in your car. Every day, make sure you have a bunch of these in your backpack or a couple of pairs in your winter coat. Just keep them lying around. It's easy because they're only $10 each. Pro tip, you would like to have one size above your comfortable size. So let's say you usually wear medium hospital gloves, then get a large. Because for most of our needs, we don't need a tight-fitting glove. We're not using these for like fine-tuned manual dexterity things. You're not trying to get an intravenous line into a patient, so you don't need tight-fitting gloves. Instead, something that is loose, so it's easy to pull on, easy to pull off, that's probably going to be more convenient. Okay, this picture was taken many years ago during the Ebola scare, and the ambulance crew I was on, we were taken off the line to take our turn learning how to put on an Ebola suit. Thankfully, we never had to actually use one. I never had an Ebola patient, but it sure did scare the daylights out of us. So anyway, no, you don't need to get into spacesuit territory here. Just mask and gloves will be fine. This is a question like, what's your name? Where are you? What day of the week is it? And what's going on? Person, place, time, and event. If the person cannot right away answer them properly, then it's called confusion. It's called altered mental status. And so this slide here. So airway. They're slightly different from airway and breathing. Airway is when air goes in and out of the body. Breathing is when the lungs are actually working and moving oxygen into your blood and carbon dioxide out. And then circulation is when blood goes around. So the whole point of that is oxygen goes through the airway, gets soaked into the lungs, and then oxygen is moved around the body. So what can interfere with circulation? Severe bleeding. And I don't mean like a little bit of dribbling blood. I mean like gushing or large amounts of blood out. Skin is pale, cool, and sweaty. We teach EMTs that these are the signs of shock. And the pulse is weak and irregular or too fast. Now, if you don't know how to check for a pulse, then never mind that, right? Because you don't know how to evaluate. But you should know that somebody who is pale, cool, and sweaty, then that's not right. And if they're bleeding a lot, then that's not right. So any one of these, airway issues, breathing issues, like they have difficulty breathing, or circulation issues, then it's a good enough reason to call 911. And a mental status change for no other reason but just being confused, they don't know their name, where they are, what day of the week it is, or what's going on, then that's a reason enough to call 911. All right, you've called 911, you've dialed 911, and you hit send. Now what do? And here's some strong advice, because I know you're scared, I know it's distressing, but this, if you remember these, you can actually get EMS to your location faster, which is stay calm. If you get upset, if you sound upset, if you get aggressive to the 911 operator, then it will make it harder for them to understand you. They understand you're having a bad day, but they're having difficulty understanding what you're saying, namely your location and what's going on. So stay calm, and which will also allow you to think clearly. If you get all emotional, then you may not be able to answer the questions they're asking you. So stay calm. Speak clearly, don't yell. And I know you feel motivated to scream into your phone, but the reality is that your phone is not built to handle that kind of volume. All you're doing is causing the sound to get distorted in the 911 operator's earpiece. They will not hear what you're saying. So yelling does not make your message clear. Instead, yelling most likely will make it impossible for them to know what you just said. You want to use a normal speaking volume and a normal speaking speed in order to make sure you get heard. And now briefly explain what happened. Don't go into the lore, don't go into the background, because the more you tell them, the more they have to parse, and the longer it's going to take them to know which kinds of units to send to you. They're not going to send everybody. New York City has the largest EMS operations in the world. Other cities are bigger, but their EMS service is not as big as New York City. But that doesn't mean that we have lots of vehicles of all kinds to send to you. No, they're that big because they're that busy. Well, typically now they get around 6,000 calls in every 24 hours. So they're not going to send everybody to you. It doesn't work like that. They will try to figure out what you or your loved one really needs and send that unit. And then the other units they will keep available, if they are available, for when somebody else really needs them. So you want to briefly explain what's going on. Have the address ready. You don't want to be wasting time looking up the address after you call 911. It would be great if you had it available right there at your fingertips as soon as they ask. No, they cannot triangulate your cell phone signal, and so maybe DoorDash can, maybe Uber can, but New York EMS operator has not upgraded to that kind of a system yet. So they really need your address. And then not only that, but you can be very specific with exactly where you are, like which corner, which room, etc. And then finally, it would be good to know the age and gender. That seems pretty obvious, but not everybody is prepared with that information. Don't bring this phone call to a screeching halt while you say, wait a minute, let me find out. Okay, have this information ready before you reach the 911 operator. Okay, and then after this, a series of questions will come from the operator. Every one of these questions serve a very important purpose. They may not seem important to you. To you, it may seem like they're wasting time, but believe me, all of these questions have survived the test of time. Over the decades, some questions have been dropped, some questions have been added in order to improve the efficiency and reach of the EMS system. And you may laugh, what efficiency, what reach? Look, they would have been even less efficient, less able to reach the public without these questions. So through trial and error, they figured out which ones need to be on the list. They are asking you, so instead of arguing with them, instead of refusing to answer, you're just delaying response. So just quickly, effectively, efficiently answer every question they ask in order to get those units to you as soon as possible. Just when you think you're done, the 911 operator is going to then transfer you to the EMS operator, and then some of these questions will be asked again. This is not the time to scream at the EMS operator and say, why can't you folks get your story right? I already answered that. I already answered that. No, I'm not going to answer it again. You're wasting time. Okay, so things could be smoother, but they're not. This is not fantasy land. This is reality. You're trying to get help for your loved one as soon as possible. The best way to do that is to answer these questions as soon as possible, twice if necessary, 3 times if necessary. Just answer the questions. Once you finish calling that number, you need to keep that line free, because they may need to call you back. They may need you to verify an address. They may need to ask a follow-up question. How do they know what to ask? And that is that they will call you back. There are times when we arrive at the location that we were given, and then we don't see the patient. We don't see the patient, and so we get on the radio and say, dispatch, I need a call back because we're at the location. No patient found. And then the dispatcher says, stand by, and then they're calling. And guess what? If they don't get you, then they'll keep the unit around for just to be sure. But if they still can't reach you in like 5 or 10 minutes, then they're going to say call unfounded, and they're going to put the unit back in service, meaning they're going to end this call. They're going to end this job. So here you are on the phone with somebody else tying up the line, and not realizing that the unit call to your problem has been canceled. So keep the line free. If you must call somebody else, like other family, then use another phone. Find some way to get another phone, but keep this line free. I said this already, designate somebody to wait outside and wave down the vehicles as they arrive. And that's only if you can spare somebody. You never leave your family member alone if they're having a medical emergency, as long as you are safe, of course. Okay. All right. Before you call 911, how are you supposed to know you're going to need 911? Like, what am I, a fortune teller? No, I mean like preparing your environment to help EMS in case you ever need to call them. For example, there have been many times where I've responded to the address or the location and I can't find the house number. And some brilliant person, landlord or realtor, decided that black letters on a dark brown background is a good idea. It may seem very, very fashionable during the day, but at night it's impossible. We will not see it. Even if we take our floodlights and shine it down the road at the buildings, that's slowing us down. We're going down the street looking for this number, and we have to pause at every house, shine our floodlight at the address if we can find one. Instead, try to make it so that the address is clearly visible from the street at night. If you need to, consider installing a permanent light so that at night it turns on, maybe auto on or something, illuminating the address number so that anybody who needs to find this place can see it. Okay. Before you call 911. So, what are the chances that you or your loved one will have a medical emergency? Well, the sicker you are, the higher the chance, right? If you have no medical complaints, then it's not probable. But what if you or somebody you live with does have a chronic illness, and they are on like 2 or 3 or more medications? Then the risk of, hey, there's the ambulance passing by. The risk that you may need to call 911 for them increases one of these days. In preparation for that day, a good idea is to have the list of their medications ready, because this is a real-time sync. On scene, we often spend 10-15 minutes writing down the person's medications. Or that's in the old days. Maybe nowadays they just take their agency issued smartphone and just snap pictures of the labels. That would be interesting, but if that's true, but still somebody has to find them. And maybe your family keeps them all in a shoebox, or maybe they don't, and it's scattered all over the apartment. 3 or 4 are in the kitchen, a couple are in the medicine cabinet, a couple of these bottles are in the living room. They're just all over the place, wasting time looking for them. Instead, if you could just have a list. Everybody has a computer now, right? Or some kind of editor. Just type it up. And you need to record everything on that label, the medication label. And then have that list in a Word document, then print it next, and then make copies of it and keep it around the house. One in the person's wallet in case they get hit by a car. One in the medicine cabinet, because that's one of the first places EMS will look for medication. And then any other place, like the sicker the person is, the higher the probability that they may call 911 one of these days. Then consider keeping one on the refrigerator. And anytime you do, you want to keep it in an envelope for privacy reasons, confidentiality reasons, so that guests or other strangers don't help themselves to that information. So keep it in a sealed envelope, and then write medical emergency information. And then for those of you who want to go extra fancy, you can put the Star of Life. This is the EMS Star of Life. It doesn't have to be blue. Blue helps if you have a color printer. If not, don't worry about it. Just this design. And then if you can't fit the envelope through your printer, what you can do is print this out, then cut it out with scissors and scotch tape it to the envelope. This will really grab our attention. And then we just say, oh, convenient. And we take the envelope, look inside, we see the meds and go, very nice, very nice. Thank you very much. When you make this list, it should go without saying that you want to keep it current. Right? You don't want to give us a 10-year-old list and half of these things the person doesn't take anymore. And then there's another bunch of meds that they now take that's not on the list, right? So you want to keep it up to date. That's going to be for somebody who's like you're really, really close to, because this could be a bit of an effort. And so you probably don't want to do this for everybody, but your grandparents might be somebody you want to put on the short list. Your children, if they have some chronic medical condition, that should go without saying, right? So not for everybody, but for the people you really, really care about. Okay, this one you don't have to remember, but just FYI, pro tip, when EMS arrives, they're going to ask you these questions. Obviously, what happened, and what's their mental status? Are they alert to person, place, time, event? What's your name? Where are you? What day of the week it is? What's going on? How is their airway, breathing and circulation? They also ask if this person fell or hit their head or hurt their back or neck. That's very important. I don't have time to get into it now, but that's actually quite relevant. So, and now they have been trained to ask these questions. So, what are you feeling? What's bothering you? And then, are there any allergies? What medications are you taking? So if you have the list ready, that just right there, like this is answered in a half a second. Here's the list. Oh, thank you. What past medical history? So are there any ongoing medical conditions that they need to know about? And they need to tell the emergency room about when they get there. The last thing they ate or drank. And then when. Because the more the person ate the shorter time ago, the higher the chance that they'll vomit, depending on the emergency. And then everybody needs to know that, the chance that this person will vomit. And then, how did this happen? Events leading up to. So it's called SAMPLE. You can open up a new tab on your browser and Google or use your search engine to look for EMT SAMPLE sample, and you'll see this list there. Okay. While you're waiting for EMS to arrive, position the patient. Now, if they're having difficulty breathing and they can sit up and wants to, then you can help them, but only if they're having difficulty breathing and they can sit up and they want to. If any of those three is not true, you probably want to lay them down, because helping them sit up is helping them breathe a little better, but only if they're breathing almost enough as it is. If they're having trouble breathing enough to stay conscious, that's it. Don't sit them up. Instead, lay them down, because laying them down helps blood reach the brain. Have you seen this posture in TV and movies? A secondary character in the story is dying, and then the lead character is holding them up and saying, "Please don't leave me, I can't live without you," etc. Well, what are they doing really? If this person really is dying, gravity is draining the blood away from their brain. So that's not good. That's fiction. But in fiction, doctors put stethoscopes on backwards, so don't use fiction as any kind of medical advice, source of medical information. In reality, if they're having difficulty sitting up, if they look pale, if they have airway, breathing, circulation problems, it probably is better to lay them down. And so that blood can reach their brain and doesn't have to fight gravity to get up there. But that creates a new situation, which is, what if they were laying down and then they vomited. And now that they're laying down, they may accidentally inhale the vomit. So the American Heart Association teaches something called recovery position, and this is what it looks like. So I'm pretty sure that the American Heart Association won't mind if I borrow their picture, especially since I'm giving them full credit. In fact, I'll go one better. We teach this as one of the important lessons of CPR, cardiopulmonary resuscitation. You know that thing where they do compressions on the chest? Let me get out of the way. When they do compressions on the chest. And so CPR is a great skill to have. If you know CPR already, good on you. If you're interested in learning how to do CPR so that you can be ready to do it if somebody you cared about needed it, then go find a CPR class. They usually take a day, max 2 days. They're about $100 privately. But Queensborough Community College also has CPR classes too. There are 2-day and 1-day versions of CPR. The 2-day is for professionals. You get a professional certificate out of it. The 1-day is for bystanders. There are several of them happening every semester. I know all the instructors who teach them, and they all have more experience than I do. They've been on the ambulance saving lives longer than I have, so they're all very good. So you can't go wrong with a CPR class here at Queensborough Community College. This announcement was made possible by a sponsor, Queensborough Community College. Okay. At the beginning, I said we're not going to talk about specific medical conditions to specific medical treatments to specific medical conditions. I'm going to make one exception, which is diabetes, because diabetes is a real big problem all over the world, actually, but especially in America, especially in New York, especially in Queens. I'm expecting that you know somebody who is a diabetic. Who do you contact if you're interested in a CPR class? The RFK Building G main office of this department, HPED, Health, Physical Education, and Dance. It's in room 116. Janice or Donna, can you confirm in the chat the location and telephone number of the HPED office, so somebody can contact you if they're interested in a CPR class? Or you can just search for Google for Queensborough Community College CPR. That probably will come up too. Okay, where were we? Diabetes. Okay, so diabetes is a disease where the blood sugar, thank you, Janice, 216. Diabetes is a problem where the blood sugar is too high. And why is that an issue? It damages the body. Where? Everywhere. Diabetes, uncontrolled diabetes, damages everything, everywhere. And that is the oversimplification of a very complicated disease. So they take medications to bring the sugar down. Sometimes that doesn't work, doesn't end up in a efficiently or effectively, and the medication causes the blood sugar to get too low, and that can cause confusion, altered mental status, coma, and then death within hours. Too low blood sugar can cause death within hours. This is a genuine medical emergency. So of course, call 911. And then for a diabetic, there are two things you have to remember. First of all, they desperately need sugar, but then watch out, because you don't want to just tilt their head back and dump in a can of orange juice. You may cause them to choke because they may inhale it. Depending on how bad of a situation they're in, they may inhale it. You don't want to put in a hard candy, because they may choke on it. The hard candy can lodge in their windpipe. So how do you know they're able to protect their airway and it's safe to give them something to drink? Well, tell them, let me see you swallow. Can you swallow for me? Let me see you swallow. And if you see their throat go up and down in that normal function of swallowing, you know two things. First, that they can protect their airway and now it's safe for them to give them something to drink, and also that they can follow directions, which means they're not that far gone. So go ahead and give them some orange juice, apple juice. Not Diet Coke, obviously, they need the sugar. 911 is on the way, by the way, right? You call 911. Okay, the other thing you really need to know is do not help them take their diabetes medications. In any other disease, it's probably okay to help them with the medications for that disease, and they probably need it. But with diabetes, that's the worst thing you can do, because remember, their sugar level is too low, and what do diabetes medications do? It brings it down. So you're taking a situation that is a medical emergency and making it worse by giving them their diabetes medication. Do not. You will kill them before EMS has a chance to arrive. So this is this one exception do not help a diabetic take their medications. Stroke. You've heard of a stroke, and if you search on your favorite browser for stroke, you're going to get FAST, which is face, arms, speech, and these are the ways to let you know if a large vessel stroke is in progress. Not so useful for a small stroke, but that's above and beyond the scope of this presentation. However, I'm only putting this slide up is because when 911 finally arrives, they're gonna ask you when was the last time you saw them well. It's called last known well, and they really need to know that, because and when was the last time before you saw them before the symptoms started. And the reason why is some kinds of strokes can be reversed depending on how soon you can get them on the operating table. And if they arrive too late because everybody was dilly-dallying, then it's too late, and now the stroke cannot be reversed. The person is now stuck like that for the rest of their life. So if you can get them to the hospital in time, then they can actually get some of that function back, their mental function, like 90% back, 80% back, depending on the kind of stroke, etc. Okay. Otherwise, if you're not having a medical emergency but somebody else is, you just happen to be on the road driving, you hear a siren, pull over and stop. Don't sit there wondering, is it coming, what direction it's coming from, do I really need to stop? The fact is, if you just hear a siren, pull over and stop, which means you have to hear the siren, which means it's illegal to wear headphones or play music so loud that you cannot hear emergency vehicle sirens. That is the law. So if you say, I don't care, I'm going to do what I want, well, I'm hoping that you care about your fellow human being, that you don't want to be there oblivious to the ambulance who's trying to pass you. And I hope that you hope that other people will be that considerate when you're having a medical emergency or somebody you love and care about. If you've ever, by the way, speaking of the road, if you've ever seen an ambulance stop at a red light, turn on their lights and sirens, cross the red light, and then turn it off and keep on going, and you're thinking, did he just do that just to get out of a red light? Not always, not always. I mean, humans are humans. Some humans do take advantage of the system, but not always, because there have been many times where we're in the ambulance and just cruising, going to get lunch, and then suddenly we get a call. So we say, 10-4, and we're on the way, and we turn on lights and sirens, and then after a short amount of time, the dispatcher calls us back and says, 87 yourself, cancel the job. The job is not unfounded, or it was a duplicate, a dupe, and somebody else got it, or somebody else got there sooner, so you're free. All right, works for us, and we turn off the lights and sirens, go back to normal speed. So it happens a lot. It happens quite a lot. Okay. We're expanding the scope. See, notice how I'm layering out. We started with you, and then we expanded to the actual emergency that you're having or your loved one is having, and now we're moving out into the community. So what about a disaster? Here's a picture I took of the ambulance agency I'm part of responding to Hurricane Sandy in the Rockaways at the staging zone. And so here are some advice for during it or before a disaster. You want to have safe zones prepared in advance, which means you want to stay on top of news. Put that cat video down once in a while and log in. Check your news, see what's going on in the world, if there are any public health alerts. Never use anything elevator or anything that relies on electricity. They might put you in danger. Take the stairs. You may want, if you're not getting a signal because the cell towers are out of power, then you want to be in airplane mode so you don't drain your battery. You may want to consider having like a backup battery available. Like, what are they now, like $20? A standby charger, a phone charger battery like that, solar powered phone charger, that kind of a thing. And have a disaster plan for your family, which means, do your children know where to go if they can't reach you? And they can't reach you because the cell towers are down, so none of the phones are working. Do they know where to go? So make a plan with them together. Be aware of escape routes. You have a lot of numbers on your phone right now. How many of them will you be able to salvage if your phone gets lost or broken or you drop it in the river? How many of those very, very important numbers and other pieces of information that are crucial to you and your life, how many of you do you have in some other source? So every once in a while, write it on paper or on a notepad editor and then print it out. Just keep that list up to date. That way, if you ever lose your phone, then you can have this information. Take a CPR class, and in the chat is the office and phone number you can contact for more information. And of course, you can, you know what, let's take a moment to do that. I just gave you advice. Is it good advice? Greensboro Community College CPR. What happens if you do that? First link up. And this is, so this is the Department of Continuing Education, but it's a great way to start. Here's the class that I'm talking about. So anyway, it works. I won't read this to you. You can read this for yourself. It works. Okay, and now have an emergency kit. What emergency kit? Search for it. I mean, make up your own kit. You don't have to go to Amazon or buy somebody else's emergency kit. You can make your own. What you do is you browse, use your favorite search engine and search for emergency kit, and you'll have lots and lots of examples of other people's preferred emergency lists. And you just go through, read them, a bunch of them, and pick and choose which items make sense to you. And not only make sense in that you might actually need it, but also you can afford it. Like my emergency kit does not have a quick clot hemorrhage control pack because those are $50, and I don't have that kind of money. So that's not in my emergency kit, for example. Okay, so you have a list of emergency supplies, and you can assemble it. You know, buy a cheap backpack from the 99-cent store. It doesn't have to be very durable or even pretty. Maybe bright colors so you can see it in the dark, and also add spare clothing and blankets, non-perishable snacks. Maybe I should take out the water because of what we've been learning about microplastics these days. But like a can of water, I guess, makes more sense. Lights, batteries, rechargeable lights, some cash, maybe even a credit card if you're that financially savvy, and anything else you can think of for your bag. And what happens is, this bag you'll keep in like the closet near your door. That way, if a firefighter ever bangs on your door at 3 o'clock in the morning and say, "There's a fire in your building, get out now," and all you have time for is to put on a coat over your pajamas, grab your car keys and wallet, and your go bag. That's all you have time for. And of course, the rest of your family too. And then out you go. And now you have something to hold you over for a day until you can start getting your life back together. Last part of this presentation, with 8 minutes left, I want to say something new that was not in last semester's presentation, which is you are now safe. You don't need to call 911. You have no medical emergency, and neither do your loved ones. So what are we talking about here? Can you help your neighbor who's having a medical emergency? Not all of your neighbors, not everybody in your community, but you know, the ones you care about, the ones who are nice, the ones who bring you cookies and you share recipes, the ones you get along with. Is there any way you can help your extended community when they're having their medical emergency? And that means, is there a way you can help EMS help other people you like? And the answer is, get vaccinated. When we're talking about medical emergencies and the rest of your community, the big one is get vaccinated. Now, some of you are rolling your eyes. I'm checking if anybody logs off because they've heard enough. Okay, for those of you who are still here, vaccinations save millions of lives, if not billions of lives. Yes, vaccinations do harm thousands of people and cause severe harm to dozens, because this is the real world, not fantasy land. And nothing is guaranteed, nothing is 100% in the real world. No matter what treatment you can think of, there are side effects. There are side effects to oxygen. There are side effects to water. There are side effects to an ambulance ride. You can get into a car accident. So any medical treatment does have effects. But when we're talking thousands instead of millions, that's a 1 in 1,000 chance. I mean, 1/1000th of the people who were saved got hurt. So the question I ask you is, do you feel lucky? Where are you on the bell curve of probability of whether the vaccine will help you or hurt you? If you say then, but I read an article that said, look, there are a lot of articles that say a lot of things, but then are you able to, do you know enough about this subject matter to separate the BS from the facts, from the real truth? And then how do you get that kind of knowledge, wisdom? How can you tell whether the article you're currently reading actually reflects reality, or it's just some person's opinion or some person's misinformation, disinformation? So there are experts who are good at this kind of a thing because they have education, training, real world experience, and then they can see whether the article you just read is actually making sense. So I need to draw your attention then, and this is still very much related to helping your community, which is you want to refine and tune your BS meter. When somebody is saying, don't listen to your doctor, they're lying to you, they just want money, then your response should be, how do I know you're not lying to me? How do you know you're not saying these things because you're trying to make money off of my likes and subs? And then listen to the excuse they give, because this is a total stranger on the internet telling you to ignore the advice of trained, educated, certified healthcare professionals. So what is their motivation? And if they're asking you to question your doctors, you should be not only questioning your doctors, which is not a bad idea because doctors are people too, but so is your favorite social media influencer. They're a person too. They are corruptible. They can be mistaken too. Bring me to the end of this lecture presentation. Here's my email address, jmoon@qcccuny.edu. Thank you for coming to my talk.